Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Rebuild SoCal Zone. My name is John Hakel, and here again with me is my co-host, Carol Church. Hello, Carol.
Hi, John. Happy to be here.
Great. Hey, we are thrilled to have our guest today, a gentleman that I've known for several years, just a quality individual. Currently, he is the CEO of LA Metro.
This episode was recorded in Phil Washington's final month as CEO of LA Metro, a position he left at the end of May 2021.
Good afternoon, Mr. Phil Washington.
Good afternoon, John and Carol. So happy to be here. So happy to be on the show and look forward to the discussion.
Great. All right, let's dive into some questions. What are some key accomplishments during your time at LA Metro? What are you most proud of?
Well, let me say that, we've done so much here at LA Metro. I mean, you can go back to Measure M. You can talk about the studies we've done, particularly how women and girls travel, trying to figure out how to enhance the customer experience for folks. You could talk about the many projects, capital projects that we're doing. You can talk about our operations, our on-street operations. You can talk about how we have, I think, successfully in many ways navigated the pandemic. You can talk about our next gen programs. I mean, there's so many accomplishments, but I think the one I point to is the investment that we have made in the professional development of our employees and that investment in human capital, I think, is the greatest accomplishment that I believe that I have had a part in, making sure that we provided opportunities for people to advance in the agency. I think we had 5,000 promotions in the last 6 years. We have produced 6 chief executive officers or CEOs that have left Metro and gone out to the industry and are leading the industry. And so that means, I think, that our brand and our leadership in terms of thought leadership in the industry is very popular. And so I point to that as the greatest achievement and accomplishment that I've been involved in and that I've led, and that is the advancement of human capital and the investment in people. And that is particularly important and valuable, I think, for the women and the people of color that have really took advantage of the professional development and the promotions. That 5,000 promotions, most of them are women and people of color. And so we are very proud of that accomplishment.
That just leads me to believe that, LA Metro is the place to work.
Yeah.
It really just gives you an understanding of the culture, and those that want to do a good job have an opportunity to climb and to grow, which is
Mhm.
sometimes I think when you think about a public agency, you don't necessarily think it of those terms. So that's something that our listeners I know need to know about, because it is about professional growth, and to see the rewards and the entitlement that people are coming out with through the leadership there is it's a good place to be.
Yeah, I think so. I really think so. I think given an opportunity, people do, for the most part, they do good work, given an opportunity. And so our job is to mentor and to bring people along. And so, and take a chance on people. I've always said, listen, I own well-intentioned failure. I own that. And they or you own the successes. And so I think if we as leaders are willing to allow people to sort of spread their wings, if you will, and not be afraid to fail. And if they know that I will own that well intentioned failure, I think that creates an environment where their initiative is allowed to just flourish. And that is where we get the great ideas from people all across the agency. I think that environment and allowing for that environment becomes very important in any industry that you're in.
Very much agreed. Yeah, no, very well said. Thank you for those inspiration, and what a wonderful place. Again, I think Metro has created an environment for those that want to do well that they can. So thanks for that, Phil. I appreciate that. Well, we're just coming off of Infrastructure Week, as you know, last week. Rebuild SoCal Partnership probably launched one of the largest I should say, launched the largest campaign that we have done in our history. And the timing couldn't be more perfect because people are talking about infrastructure. And so we took that opportunity to kind of highlight some of like the mini campaigns that we've been doing as well, such as Next Gen, such as safety, women in construction, as well as why infrastructure is important. So we were able to highlight that. And I think in many respects, because it is on everybody's mind between President Biden and, of course, additional monies that the state's going to receive. It's amazing to think about. You were a big part of his transition team. And I would love for you to talk a little bit more about your role and what your experience was like and some of your takeaways.
I'm very honored to have been asked to lead the agency review team for transportation. And prior to that, as a co chair for the policy committee, which was a lot of work that laid the groundwork for the transition team. And so I was very, very proud to have been asked to do that and honored. When you get a call like that, I mean, you 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 got to say yeah. I mean, you can't be on there talking about, listen, I'm too busy. I got something going on. I mean, come on. And so very honored to have been asked to do that. I mean, when I got the call, I mean, you start thinking, wow, first of all, how did they get my cell phone number? You know what I mean? I mean, my personal cell. I'm like, what's up with that?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the first part of the work was the policy committee, the infrastructure policy committee that started the beginning of last year. And the idea behind this was putting together, long before the agency review team started, but putting together a committee that would propose and write down day one executive orders and policies around infrastructure, and not just day one executive orders, proposed executive orders around infrastructure, but also policies, proposals around the first 100 days in terms of policies. And that committee was large. That committee was 300 people on that policy committee with 5 co-chairs, myself and 4 others. I've said this before, the 300 people on that committee were the best infrastructure minds, I think, in the entire world. They were all over the country. They were water experts. They were, of course, transit experts. There were high-speed rail experts. There were workforce development experts. I mean, it was infrastructure across the board. And we put these policies together, day one policies and also first 100-day policies. Everything you can think of came up in these committees. We broke up these 300 folks into 8 subcommittees, and we really dug in on these issues and ended up with nearly 100 proposed executive orders and first 100-day policies. And so, we submitted those, and many of the things that you saw the president sign off on, like his first day and, around infrastructure, I'm happy to say it came out of this policy committee. And so that is just fantastic. And then after finishing that, I'm happy to say, I got the call and was asked to lead a much smaller transition agency review team group of only 20 people, and was happy to do that. So listen, this is, a guy from the south side of Chicago in public housing being asked to help out the country. And so this was very, very rewarding, and I learned such a great deal. And I hope I shared what I learned or what I know with other folks on those committees.
Needless to say, Phil, you didn't get very much sleep, or did you during that time frame? Because I can only
No,
imagine.
no. You know what? I didn't. Wow. I mean, I guess I was lured into this by folks saying, oh, Phil, it'll be 10, 15 hours a week. And I actually used that line to get the agency review team members to come on the team. I tell you what, it was intense, and it was more like 40, 50 hours a week in addition to my job here at LA Metro. So I got to say, I mean, I called these people, the 20 people that were on the agency review team, I called them cold, and only one declined. Only one turned me down. So there you go.
Maybe on a side note, Phil, we in the industry can't thank you enough. You didn't get any extra stippet. You didn't
No.
do
No.
anything. You did it for the love of the country, A. But quite candidly, you had your face in there to make sure Los Angeles gets their fair share of the pie. And I applaud you for doing that. That's over and above the call of duty.
Yeah, thank you, John. I mentioned I learned so much. I mean, we talked to the airlines. We talked about the 737 MAX issue. We talked to the tribal nations, interviews with labor leaders and talking about the creation of national infrastructure banks, talking to congressional offices and their members, talking to Amtrak folks. I mean, it was incredible. It was an incredible journey to figure out how we could convey all of what we learned to the new administration, and also to evaluate and assess the U.S. Department of Transportation, which was a big part of the agency review team. What is the morale? How is USDOT working? What improvements can there be? And so I think in terms of learning that and then producing ports and all of that, I mean, I think the last deliverable was what we call the state of the agency. So the state of USDOT, and that thing was 50, 60 pages. And so everyone played a role on our team, 20 people, some of the best minds in the industry. And I made sure California was represented by picking up Therese McMillan up in the Bay Area, picking up Toke Samashaken, who leads Caltrans, picking up Patty Moynihan right down here in Los Angeles as a commissioner, picking up David Cameron from the labor side. So we had the best minds, along with people like Polly Trottenberg, who's now the deputy secretary. I called these people cold and asked them to be on that team. Incredibly, only one person said, "No, Phil, I can't do it." All the rest of them said yes. But of course, I told them it was only 10 to 15 hours a week.
I want to go back to a word that you had said about the journey. Can you share with our listeners the leadership journey and how you went from the south side of Chicago to become the CEO of one of the largest transit systems in the world?
Yeah, well, thank you for the question. I think that, I am from public housing on the south side of Chicago, a place called Argyle Gardens. Argyle Gardens has the distinction of being the oldest public housing in the country. A lot of great people came out of those projects, public housing, and did great things. But, this was before EPA. This housing development was built on a waste dump. Right across the highway was a waste dump. It was called the Toxic Donut. 50 landfills around it, 382 or so industrial facilities surrounding the area. I can remember getting evacuated, from public housing there because there was some sort of toxic cloud over our development. And so this is before EPA and before environmental rules and all of that. And so those kinds of things stick with me right now. And the idea of being able to lead a transportation infrastructure agency with the journey and the knowledge that comes from that, I think is incredible. I can remember being in high school and then deciding to join the United States Army at the end of the Vietnam era. The Vietnam War ended in April 1975, and I enlisted in the Army in October of that same year. And, at that time, people were really concerned about Vietnam, and many of the Vietnam veterans that came back from Vietnam were my platoon sergeants, my drill sergeants, and then going down south for basic training. So these kinds of things, I think, all lead to all of our leadership journeys. It led to mine, and many of those things I hearken back to things that my single mother talked about, as an only son out of six. And so all of these things sort of shape me, and understanding, I think, that you're not going to please everybody, but you got to be able to look yourself in the mirror when you shave in the morning. That's for guys, by the way. Uh, so, so yeah, I mean, it's been a great journey through my military career where I did almost 25 years and was fortunate enough to be promoted ahead of my peers to every rank and ended up at the pinnacle of the enlisted ranks when I retired, and then making the transition to the transportation industry, and then being put in in positions of leadership to really affect change. And that goes on even now as I depart LA Metro, where we are looking to take one last thing to the LA Metro Board, and that is a fairless system initiative to make transit free for people that are low income and students. So it's been a great journey.
I do want to thank you for your service to our country. That 25 years, that says a lot about a person who is dedicated, has vision, has a goal, and you did it all. So again, thank you, Phil.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I was blessed.
Given what you all just said and all the things that you have done, knowing you for all these years, there's kind of always been in your eyes, we got to go forward. We've got to think forward. We can't be around and not doing things. And your agency is certainly one of those that is cutting edge. It's always been cutting edge since you're there. But kind of stepping back now as you will be departing Metro, are you optimistic about the future of public transportation?
You know, I am. I am really optimistic about, where we are. I mean, we have here in Los Angeles the largest transportation infrastructure program in North America. We are building out infrastructure here, transportation infrastructure, that will last for the next 100 years. We have a measure in Measure M where the voters said it should continue with no sunset. So, what I try to think about and what I thought about in 2016 as we were, really advocating for this measure. And, I give so much credit to our board and Mayor Garcetti. You need a political leader in doing something like this. And I thank him for being that leader. But when we talk about what this area will be, I think about how would we go about creating a new city? If we were going to create a new city, we would have ways to move people all around it, and not just in the city, but in the rural areas as well. And so, what we have done and what this region can be a model for is bus lines, train lines, bike programs, walking programs, micro transit programs. All of these things, I think, is where we're going to here in LA County. Now, in terms of the infrastructure in the country, I think we can be a model for how to do so many things well in this country, how to pass an incredible measure like Measure M, how to build rail systems. And we've had our challenges. We all know that. You're always going to have challenges when you're building this much infrastructure. There's going to be, when you open up the ground, you know what I mean? You're going to find anomalies. You're going to find things that you don't know is there that's going to probably increase the life of project budget or maybe delay the project. You're going to have escalation and inflation on projects. You're going to have all of these things that happen. Every project is different. Everyone has their own story. And so, if you're in this business, whether you are a staffer or whether you are a board member, whether you are a contractor, whatever you are, you have to understand that this is a tough business and there's going to be things that happen with your capital programs. There's going to be things that happen on the street every day in our operations. There's going to be things that happen when you're building out all this infrastructure. But I am bullish. I am bullish on the infrastructure here in this country. We are building a school that has a transportation curriculum. We can be the transportation center of excellence right here in LA County. That school is grades 9 to 12, a boarding school concept where the kids will stay from Monday through Friday. Listen, when you have a 14, 15-year-old kid talking about design bill and design bid bill, some people may think that kid is a nerd, but I can't wait to talk to a 14-year-old kid who's talking to me about planning their own community, designing and planning and building their own community. So we have been the thought leaders in this industry. I think the region is bright. We got a lot of things we have to fix. Got to fix the homelessness issue. There must be more affordability in this county. We have to finish all these projects, but we've got a mandate to do it. And when I think about the region, I think about how it can look in 20 years or 30 years. And I think it's bright if we take care of these issues.
Phil, thanks so much for the words of wisdom that you talk about in terms of what you see in the future of public transportation. And it's ever changing, I know that. And it's really getting the public to embrace it and to use it and to find ways to, again, move people around so they can get where they need to go safely. I did want to just touch base a little bit too. You mentioned the Seed School, and which is the college prep boarding school for career readiness in transportation infrastructure, STEM, and the humanities. Where did this brainchild come from? Where did this come from in terms of an idea? How did you develop it? What were you seeing? Maybe a little more detail. I know Rebuild SoCal Partnership made large contributions to the school because we believe in it and we believe in having students ready to come into the infrastructure world and build that awareness. We just completed a podcast with our next gen and really trying to understand where our younger people think about infrastructure, those that are introduced to it, what their feelings are, and those that haven't had any introduction to it, where they're at. And it was really a very interesting conversation with our 17 to 24-year-old, but it was good. But you really can see the need. And if you could just maybe talk a little bit more about how this project came to fruition.
Yeah. Well, we put together a career pathway in the infrastructure space. We put that career pathway together. We started working on that. When I say we, I've been thinking about this ever since I got into the transportation industry. It really goes back to my military career, to be honest with you, where there is no more structured profession than the military. All right. There is a career path in the military, regardless of what branch you're in, right? And that sort of life cycle arrangement actually starts with the recruiter coming to your house. you know,
Right.
Recruiter comes to your house or whatever, and it starts there. And then the next stage is basic training. And then the next stage is your specialty training. And then you have training gates. Each step of your career, whether you are a commissioned officer or a non-commissioned officer. I had a general officer friend of mine. He said, the schooling and the training stops when you're a two-star general. And when you're a 3 and 4-star general, you don't really get so much as training, but you get, maybe some etiquette training. I guess they teach them how to hold their fork or whatever, when they're eating or something. But this idea of training gates has always been something that has stuck with me. And so when I got into the transportation infrastructure space, I kept thinking, you know what? There is no pathway in the infrastructure space. And so we began to think about what that career pathway could be if you were in the infrastructure industry and, what courses you would need to go to. How do you go from being a bus operator to a CEO or something? And so
Right.
we were very interested in building this. And so we began to build that. And when I arrived here, we refined that with the help of our human capital development folks and built this career pathway. But there was one thing missing. And the one thing that was missing was we were not starting early enough. And so we decided, you know what, let's build a school, you
Mm.
know, grades 9 to 12, a boarding school concept, focusing on kids in the foster care system, focusing on kids that whose parents have been in the justice system. Let's build a
Mhm.
school and let's have a curriculum that really highlights transportation infrastructure. Took that to our board, specifically to then Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas. Big key in this whole thing. He said, Phil, I got the space for you. I got the spot in South LA near the area where the Rodney King riots were in 1992. This space has been sitting vacant for 25 years. He said, let's do this. And we put together a plan. Our folks here were very instrumental, Joanne Peterson and Maria Melendez and others who are still working on this. Went to our board, got a commitment for $75 million for the first 15-year operating cost. The county matched that over 15 years for operating, got a contractor to run the school, and we broke ground last October, and that school is going to have kids in it next year in August. And we'll start with ninth graders. And at the end of the day, after all grades are in, we'll have 485 kids in that school talking about transportation infrastructure and with the vision of this area being a transportation center of excellence, and people around the world who want young people that are looking for young people to work in the transportation space will say, go to LA County. That's the breeding ground. That's the farm team. So that's the vision. And we're happy to be able to do this and send kids out to the world with a skill and a career that they can carry with them.
Let's go back to what you talked about Biden, trying to get the monies, trying to figure out where we're going to go with this. Now we have a school where these young folks will be able to go to school and then come out with a good paying job. As Carol had said, Rebuild has been financially supportive of this. The unions that sit on our board, the contractors that sit on this board are thrilled that there is an opportunity that they can go in and start hiring
Mm-hmm.
people that have a good understanding of the industry. So to me, it's a win-win-win. These kids are not coming out for a job. They're going to come out with a career. And I don't know how better you can have it if you actually apply yourself.
Yeah. Hey, John, first of all, I am so appreciative. You all were some of the first ones that called up and said, hey, we're going to support this. And that's part of a Rebuild SoCal. So very, very appreciative of the early support. And yes, I mean, these kids, some of them are going to go to college. Some of them will start as interns with contractors or with the infrastructure organizations here in Southern California or around the country, whether it's water, whether it's surface transportation, whether it's aviation. We have made the pitch that in this career pathway, you see, the school now is the cradle. And if you think cradle to grave with regard to a career pathway, they will leave the school, graduate, go to college, maybe not. Next step in the career pathway is internships at our various sister infrastructure agencies, and then work full time with contractors or whatever around the country and matriculate through the career pathway and go to the Mineta Institute, go to the Eno Transportation, go to Leadership APTA, go to mid manager courses, go to managerial courses. There's plenty within the cradle to grave where you are matriculating, and the school is the cradle. The grave is, of course, the CEO position.
Well, that's a perfect segue into those that know you. We're happy for you that your journey will be moving on from Metro. What is on the horizon for you after your time and dedication at Metro? Now, I had heard that because you lived on the south side of Chicago, and as you know, the Chicago Bears need leadership in the front office. Would there be any way that you would take those skills that you've had learned from living back there, going to the Army, doing all those stuff, and go back there and try to get the Chicago Bears back into a Super Bowl, or is that off the table?
Well, listen, John, you are asking for miracles now. The Chicago Bears are a long way from being contenders, and I don't think anybody can help. No, I don't know. I mean, I have not decided on what I want to do. And I think having options is a good thing. I mean, it is great to have options. There's a lot of people that have no options. And so I think the question is, what can I do to help and be of service in the community, the industry? What can I do? And one of the options is to volunteer at a VA hospital. You know what I mean? So I haven't decided what I'm going to do. I'm still looking at options and still weighing options. But I think the takeaway here is, wow, it's great to have options. And so there's people that have no options, and that is very unfortunate. But I'm just thankful to have options, you know what I mean? And I think that I like to think that I've done enough good where, when I leave Metro or whatever, I won't be sleeping under a bridge or whatever. And so when you have options, I think it's a good thing. But I haven't decided. I just want to bring value to some part of the world. And I think I can still do that.
And Phil, I think you also said something that was so kind of magical, and it's so about your work and your leadership and your life is that you are someone who is always going to be of service, whatever that means in your life, to anybody, to a cause, to building something, to inspiring others. You can see that in your leadership and just how you talk about your life and the things that you do. It is providing service. So it's pretty inspiring.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. I think there's a reason why we as humans, at least most of us anyway, we feel this sense of satisfaction when we do something nice for others. I don't know if it's a name for it. I think it's ingrained, it's in the human DNA that when you do something and you give something or whatever, you feel pretty good about yourself. And I think that's the essence in many ways of public service. And so that's where I want to be.
Wonderful.
Phil, as we close this out, speaking on behalf of Rebuild, their board of directors, the unions, the contractors, and so many others that I've interfaced with, we thank you for being one of those CEOs that was always open to us. You never said no. We sat down and we went through a myriad of things that we thought would be good for the industry, and you were always there for us. So I personally wish you the best. You're always welcome to come by our office if you've got some time. There's a cup of coffee, we can chat. But Phil, thank you not only for your service, but also for taking time out of your busy day to be part of this podcast.
Well, thank you, John. And listen, let me say, I love the work that Rebuild is doing. You've been great. You might be making your move too, or transitioning to do something else. And I want to thank you for your great work and your great service, in the area of infrastructure and just being who you are. So thank you and thank Carol. I think Carol is fantastic and is a great leader and dedicated to this organization, Rebuild, and also dedicated to the industry. And I think you all have just made a great team, actually, along with Marcy as well. And listen, I hope that, as you transition off, that there's continuity there in the organization as you move forward, because I think the direction that you all have set for SoCal is really, really good. And I think continuity is very important.
Phil, thank you so much for those kind words. I will continue, and I know I'm losing my leader here as well, which is already a tough one. He's been my mentor. I mean, I came into this industry with no knowledge, and in the last 5 to 6 years, John has taught me so much. So, I mean, I could get really emotional right now, but I am definitely losing a leader, but I'm always be my friend. And I want to say thank you for those kind words. And yes, Rebuild will continue. The continuity is continuing. There's too much work, there's just so much to do. And it's exciting. This is an exciting time for infrastructure, and there's a lot of things that we're going to get done. And we're pretty proud of that, and we'll continue to advocate and move the needle. Thank you, Phil.
All right. Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thanks all. Take care.
That concludes today's episode on Rebuild SoCal Zone. Thank you for listening, and a huge thank you to Mr. Phil Washington and his staff for helping us organize this very informative podcast. Take care, everyone.